If you have taken responsibility, you will be all right. If you have not taken responsibility, you will not be all right. Why is that? Because when you surrender, you believe that what you are praying to has a broader, wider, and more deep wisdom than you. Because they have a broader, deeper, and wider wisdom than you, you allow them to work in their mysterious ways to fulfill what you have prayed. So if that girlfriend is not good for you, you won't get her. If that job is not good for you in China, you won't get it. If that schooling in America on the way or while you're there, something bad will happen and it's not going to work, that prayer won't work. So when our prayers don't work and we don't get our wishes, we have a very, very deep-seated kind of thought, oh, that being doesn't have power. Or it creates doubt in our mind. Oh, the 3 jewels are nothing. Oh, God is not there. Or Muhammad's not there. Whatever. We automatically think that because we've been raised in a very self-centered kind of way. We're so self-centered that even the gods have to appease and fulfill the prayers the way we want it. If they don't fulfill the prayers the way we want it, they are not holy. I will not set up an altar. I will give up. I will not do my chanting. I will do my prayer. We are so self-centered. And we're not self-centered that we're bad. That is just the way we've been brought up. That's the way society is. That's the way we're used to. When I say to you guys, the theme always is self-centeredness, please do not take offense. And please tell other students and friends not to take offense. I don't say that to offend you or to put you down or tell you you're bad. I'm telling you that that is the cause of our problems. So never take offense when I tell you, oh, you're selfish. Never take offense when I tell you you're self-centered. Never. Get out of that mode that when you hear a word that's negative about yourself, it is negative. Get into the mode that when you hear something unpleasant about yourself or that may apply to you, that is not directed towards you, that it applies because the human condition only has a few causes and we have to fit in one of those causes. We have to fit in one of those. So we are actually so naturally self-centered that when we actually pray, it is not prayer. It is not prayer. Because all the things or most of the things we pray for are not things that benefit others and ourselves ultimately. It's actually to benefit ourselves and just ourselves. So when those prayers are not fulfilled and those are not manifested the way we like, we tend to lose faith. We tend to lose hope. We tend to not believe, and we tend to stop doing our commitments, our prayers, our sadhanas, perhaps pujas, perhaps going to the church, going to the temple, whatnot. We give up. We stop. Why? Because we didn't get what we want. And we have to see that that type of prayer is not prayer. It is increasing your self-centered mind. So even in prayer, in meditation, in making offerings, we increase our self-centered mind. We increase our selfish mind. In fact, in prayer, sometimes you know what happens? We even increase the mind that expects us to get more. We think we're doing the right thing. We think we're holy. We think we're good. But actually, even making an altar, going to a church or temple or synagogue and mosque can make us even worse people. Not the mosque, not the temple, our motivation. So the beauty of Buddhist teachings is, again, let me stress, not to make you Buddhist. But if you happen to be, you will become a better Buddhist with attainments. If you happen not to be, it helps you to become spiritual. If you're not spiritually inclined, Buddhist teachings help you to become a better citizen. All 3 ways. So when we do our prayers, you listen to yourselves. Be aware what you pray for. Be aware. Don't be aware of the, may I get a girlfriend so that I can be happy, so that she can support me and I can get what I want, and then I can give her what she wants, and then we can be partners in crime and spreading the Dharma, and that I won't be lonely, and so that we can all become a fully enlightened being to benefit all sentient beings. I'm not mocking anyone. You listen to that kind of prayer. When in actuality, deep down inside, what it is we want to get that so we can fulfill our sexual and our lonely and our need for company. That's what it really is. That's what it really is. Because if you think about it, actually, if we get a girlfriend, it increases our samsara. It increases our desires and our needs and all the problems and comes with it, and more time wasted and more effort given and more arguments and more fights. And it actually pulls you away. You know, you have to realize that Buddha didn't get a wife to be enlightened. So when we say those kind of things, we're not being very honest with ourselves. We're not being very honest with the Buddhas. So what am I saying to you? Don't pray for that? No. What I'm trying to tell you is when you actually pray, when you do your prayers and meditations and dedications and aspirational prayers, let it be real prayers. Because sometimes even in our prayers, it is not prayers. It is not. It is not prayers. Why? We are just finding another outlet, a higher power, a bigger source to get what we actually want. So you have to think about that. You listen to what people pray for. You know, I watch those Madonna videos, Truth and Dare. You know, they go on a documentary with Madonna. She goes on concert in Canada, Calgary, USA, Europe. You know, she goes everywhere. And she has all her dancers, and she has a whole group. And I love it, you know, because Madonna is definitely the emanation of Vajrayogini. And if anybody says she's not, come see me. I worship her. I make silver butter lamp offerings to Madonna because she's Vajrayogini. In any case, she goes all over the place, and she does this horrible, horrible shows all over the place, which is just a disgusting sight for kids and young people, which, of course, her kid is not allowed to watch because she doesn't want her to grow up influenced badly. I didn't get that. I read that somewhere. But anyways, you know, she does all these scenes in her concert that's really ladies should not be doing, and men should not be watching ladies do. And nobody should do that except Paris in her own bedroom to herself. And you know what? And the thing is, before she goes out on these concerts, you know, because she raises hell. You know, the police come, and you know, mothers against, you know, violence and sex comes, and all these protests. And then the police come and they say, you know, we're going to stop you from doing these kind of scenes you do on your shows. They're actually masturbation scenes, you know. And she says, no, that's my artistic talent. That's the way I express my artistic, that's my artistic expression. And the Constitution is for that. So as long as you say artistic expression in the States, you know, you can do anything you want. You can run around, you know, with strawberries all over you with no clothes on. Paris will get along very well there. Couldn't you see her? She paints her naked body green, runs around saying, I'm Tara. That'll be her artistic expression. Can you imagine naked Paris running around New York? I'm Tara. Passing out lotuses to people. Omani peme hong. Disturbing, isn't it? And in America, you can get away with it if you can prove it's artistic expression. You know, you're not insane. And I'm not making a joke of this. But what happened is that the police came and they stopped her and they said, you can't, you're not going on. You know, if you do this scene, you're going to be arrested right after the show and on and on. And she says, no, I'm going to do what I want. And I'm going to do as I like it because this is my show. And so you know what she does? In front of before any show, she actually holds her dancers' hands and they do a prayer. Dear God, please give us the strength to do what we need to do. Please give us the courage and your blessings that we can give a great show and make everybody happy, and that obstacles and difficulties and problems cannot overcome us. Give us your strength, give us your blessings. And there are people out there who don't believe in what we do, and they're trying to make obstacles for what we want to do with our lives. Bless us that the obstacles go away. Amen. And I'm like, and they do these kind of prayers before every single show. The whole spiritualism is not there. It's not about spiritualism. Who are you waving at? Are you trying to touch JT again? Leave her alone. We're in public. All right? Not now. Afterwards, you guys can do what you want, you know, in your house. Don't let Dashi know. Anyways, it's you know, and you listen, and prayer has become like that. Prayer is not about becoming selfless. It's not about helping the other. It's not about taking harm and problems. It's not about absorbing sufferings. It's about, I want to do what I want to do, and if anything comes in my way, then you remove that obstacle. So if you go listen to Christian prayers in churches in America, you know, and you listen to people who go to churches and temples and holy places, and you listen to their prayers, and you listen to what they pray for, if you have any amount of wisdom, you will say that's not prayer. And that goes for Buddhists. Because if you go to a Kuan Yin temple in Malaysia, any Kuan Yin temple, if you can put a little microphone inside her statue and a little webcam, and you listen to all the people coming up to her all day long listening to what she has to put up with and what she has to listen to, trust me, there's not going to be even one person per day out of the thousands of people that visit her per day that says, "Excuse me, can you bless me that I'm not selfish anymore? May I become enlightened? I want to leave samsara." No, it's going to be, can I have a TV set? You know, can my kid get a scholarship to Calgary? You know, I'm taking these slimming pills, they ain't working. Can you give me wisdom to find a new slimming pill? You know, can I have the lucky 4D because, you know, my husband broke his whole body and only his eyes blink and work and nothing else on him works. And it's creating difficulties for me during the day and night. I mean, think about it. If you can put one of these microphones and these webcams behind, and I want to do that. One of these days, I want to do a survey. I want to open up a Kuan Yin temple somewhere and tell everybody performs miracles and put a webcam there and a little speaker. Okay, your wish is granted. They'd be like, what? Wouldn't that be fabulous? I would love to do that. I mean, you know, what's the big problem? I don't know. Every 100 person, you know, it goes, okay, your wish is granted. It's like, what? Maybe speak in Mandarin. There's something very musical that your wish has been granted. But if you think about it, and I'm not meaning criticism to anybody. You think about the prayers that you make to the three jewels. You think about it. What is spiritual about it? I'm not innocent either. I find myself guilty. I catch myself. So what I'm saying is, when are we really spiritual? And you know what's the problem here? The problem here is not that you're not spiritual. The problem here is not because you're bad, because you've been brought up in a materialistic society, such as one place is Malaysia, which is just a fabulous country, advanced, booming, food and everything is so easy. Singapore, Malaysia, Taiwan, you just go to these places. I mean, like, wow, you know, whatever you want, you got money, you can buy it. And then you're brought up that way, you know, make money. You know, have this, and then you will be perfect. And we're brought up that way from our parents and our parents. And our parents telling us that are not bad. Because their parents and their parents, most of you probably came from China or India or wherever, where, you know, you guys came to this country as immigrants to make a better life. So the whole mode of your grandparents was, I've got to make sure my kids are fed and they have a house and they never starve and they never go through famine like I went to in China. And that's very normal. And you think that's bad? No, it's not bad. You see, the problem is once you overcome the famine and you have a certain amount, it becomes ingrained that I have to make more and more and more and more and more. So business deals become money, social events become money, going to charities become money to be seen at the right place so we can get more business and get more people to like us. Dharma becomes money, doing work becomes money. Anything we do becomes a factor to make money because this survival instinct in us is very strong from our parents, from their parents, and their parents. Why? Everybody knows China is such a big country in the past on a sociological analysis. And there was a lot of famine, and people really starved. And people from China at that time were really scared to be hungry. Nobody leaves their country to become a citizen of another country because they weren't having a good time in their country. Nobody. Now you're not Chinese. Now you're not Indian. You are Malaysian. You are Malaysian. There is no distinction. All people in this country, Malay, Indian, Chinese, are Malaysian. The end. But you know, originally, there's this ingrained kind of thinking. So we have to understand on a sociological kind of basis, and also on an economic basis, socio-economic basis, and on a religious basis of why we actually go to temples and pray for this. Why? So when I tell you you're self-centered and you're selfish, and you keep thinking about yourself money, please never take it as criticism from today on into the future, and also all the things I've said in the past, because it's not. What I'm trying to do is to help you self-explore where this comes from and where our dissatisfaction and unhappiness actually arises from. Where it arises from. And so therefore, when we do Buddhistic teachings and Buddhistic practices, it is not to make us Buddhists. It is to make us a wonderful, beautiful human being, the best we can become with knowledge and wisdom to push ourselves in that direction. And if we happen in the end to turn out to be a Buddhist, wonderful. Christian, wonderful. Muslim, wonderful. Hindu, wonderful. Atheist, wonderful. A Malaysian, wonderful. It doesn't really matter what label we label ourselves, because you know why? In the end, when we die, karma, cause and effect, completely take over. So whatever labels you put on yourself, whatever you called yourself, Buddhist or not, it doesn't matter in the end. Karma takes over. Karma doesn't affect Buddhists. Karma affects every sentient being in the universe. It is an all-pervasive law of existence that pervades. You see people sometimes saying, oh, Buddha talks about karma because the pervasive thought of that time was karma, because he was born into a Kshatriya. Kshatriya, which is the next step down from Brahmin. Brahmin, Kshatriya. Caste. Out of the 4 castes, Kshatriya was the next highest. It's a warrior class. The one above that is the Brahmin class, the highest, the priestly class, who doesn't do anything that is uncouth and unclean. So you may think that because the time of the people at that time, the Jains, the Hindus, all had a belief, and even the Catholics of the 16th and 15th century Europe believed in reincarnation. Of course, those scriptures were burned in England, in France, because they were incompatible with the people at that time. But the reincarnation scriptures were definitely there. Definitely there. So what happens is, reincarnation and karma is not something indigenous of Buddhism. And it's not something that was in the Hindu thought, that because Buddha was born into that society and therefore he adopted that thought because it was just a trend. Because if you're going to say that about Buddha, why is it everything else he says contrasts the thought of his day? Example, women's issues. That women should not, jump into the fire if their husband dies. That women should not be subservient to husbands. And that women are equal and women have the same opportunities to become Buddha as anyone else. And therefore, he had a lot of female disciples who reached very high levels of meditation. So he had a lot of thoughts in his time that contrad Brahmin or Hindu or Jain thought at that time. So karma is not something that Buddha talked about because it was in vogue. It was something Buddha perceived in the first, the second, and the third watch of the night of his enlightenment. At the eve of his enlightenment and total understanding at the dawn of his enlightenment. So karma just happens to fit into one of the great Hindu saints, because the Hindu saints are saints. They can see. They can perceive something higher. Anybody who has any understanding can perceive karma. Why? The disparity of the world, the disparity between people, the disparity within society, even the disparity within one family between siblings who have the same equal start in life, yet they end up different. So if you say, well, their mind came from the parents, if you say their mind came from the parents, then every single child has to have the exact same brain power or no brain power as the parents. One child cannot be smarter. So obviously, the physical form that supports the life form, the mind, comes from the parents, but not the mind. And therefore, each child, even if there's 5 kids, 10 kids in the family, they'll be very different, and their success and what they can achieve in their family will be very different. Although they brought up on the same values, same background, and even their flesh comes from the exact same people. Even the disparity within the family can be explained by karma. So they can be explained within a community, within a neighborhood, within a community. The disparity, the differences, good and bad, can be explained within a community, within a village, within a city, within a country, within the country's interdependence with each other. And some countries' disparity are very poor, and some countries very wealthy. And also between universes and dimensions. Karma explains it all perfectly, clearly, and precisely. And also it gives you a sense of fairness and makes you take responsibility. People who take karma as the life force of their life, they take responsibility for their life. People who leave it to an outer force that they have no control. You see, if they had no control, go all the way with it. If you have no control, then you have no control. Then the outer force, the higher creative force, must provide everything for you. Why do you even need to do anything? Why? It doesn't make sense also. So if a higher force creates and provides and gives you everything, why is it if you don't make effort, it's not provided? When you make an effort, it is provided. Why? And at the same time, if this higher outer creative force created you to have a free mind, if you were given a free mind, it also doesn't make sense, because if you choose the wrong path, why should you suffer for being given the free mind and not enough information to digest what should be picked good or bad. As example I gave last week, if you're born in some remote, distant jungle and you've never heard of anything except cutting people's head off and shrinking it and, running around a fire and, and running around naked, and that's all you've known for the last 2,000 years, if you're not giving the information to pick the right path so that you do not descend into hell or permanent purgatory. Doesn't seem right to me. It doesn't explain anything. So we cannot choose a faith or a religious practice that is for privileged people, only for a few people who have the economic ability and the sociological background and the complacency to be so privileged to say, well, I choose this, I choose that, and this is the way destiny is given me. Well, what about the other people in the world? So when we choose a type of thought that only fits a few privileged few, it doesn't help. Why? There's only a few of us who can think, well, I choose this and choose that, because not everybody is at that level. So, and even that ability to choose is a disparity in itself. Is a disparity in itself. So all that, to me, doesn't make sense. It doesn't make me feel good at all. We can have computers here. We can have cars here. We have great light. We have great water. Like I say, Malaysia is fabulous. It is such a fabulous country. We have everything here. But what about countries that don't have anything? Don't tell me that why aren't you spiritual? And that, why were a creative force put you there to suffer and never hear anything and never have an opportunity toward life at all? I've seen it. And you just suffer, but and afterwards you go to hell or heaven, and that's your thing. But me, I go to hell or heaven too, because I've done good things. What happens if they didn't even have an opportunity to do good things or to hear about the difference between good and bad? So if you're talking about a wild person in some remote jungle somewhere, which exists today, and all they do is kill and kill and kill each other, and they've been taught that's good for the last 1,000 years because, you eat the enemy's heart, you get their power, you protect your family, you're protected from magic. That's what they believe. Borneo example. Then they believe it's good. That's their belief system. And so actually, that belief is wrong because any harm brings unhappiness. So for them not to hear that message, if I'm a Buddhist and I say, well, you had a choice, and Buddha created me and put me here, and he put you there, and, so I learned my lesson. What about that person? Doesn't apply. So we can't have a religion for a privileged few. We have to have a religion that encompasses every sentient being, including the animals and the insects and other dimensions of formless forms that only mind exists. So Buddhism encompasses all sentient beings, human and non-human, all disparities, all backgrounds, all races, all people, and it explains every single person and being in this planet and beyond. For me, that helps because this type of philosophy, as Buddha has turned the wheel of Dharma, applies to the persons in a jungle who doesn't know anything. It applies to the animals in the forest and why they're there. Applies to the crippled and the blind who are born in that way. It applies to the very wealthy who manipulate power. It applies to the leaders. It applies to the kings and queens. It applies to the normal citizens. It applies to the nobodies in the world like me. It applies to people who are successful. It applies to people who are not successful. It applies to black people and white people and yellow people and brown people and red people. It applies to women. It applies to men. It applies to sick people and healthy people. It applies to short and tall people. It applies to happy and unhappy people. It applies to people who want to commit suicide and people who live in happiness and go to parties. It applies to very successful businessmen and businessmen who are trying. This philosophy of karma and reincarnation and responsibility applies to everyone, even an insect. And that is the vastness of Buddha's philosophy. No one is left out. Everybody is covered. And it's a gentle philosophy of truth, and it's a philosophy that explains and takes away emptiness in your heart, takes away hopelessness, takes away the thought of helplessness. Why? although karma is there and you are the creator, you are the author of your karma, you are the inheritor of your karma, it is not fatalistic. Your karma is not fated and it has to remain. If you do nothing about it and you let your karma just flow, then yes, it is fatalistic because you chose it to be. If you are doing something about your karma, then it is not fatalistic. In fact, it is optimistic because you know that 5 years later you're going to have an accident. 6 years later you're going to die and be born as an animal. 3 years later you're going to be separated from your wife. 2 years later you're going to lose your job. 1 year later, whatever business you try to do cannot grow. If you know that, or you've been kindly told that, or you've been warned, or somehow whatever, and you do that information instead of scaring you, should bring extreme optimism to you. Why? I'll do something about it. Then the next question is, what will I do about it? Then you engage in the cause of how that happened to understand how to avert and how to understand how to stop and how to understand how to prevent. So actually people think that karma is fatalistic. It is not. Fatalistic means it's fatal, it's fated, you can't do anything about it. No. You see, let me give you logic. If karma is fatalistic, why meditate and practice and become a Buddha? It's contradictory. Then how can you become a Buddha? Never mind become a Buddha, an all-omniscient being who can perceive all reality and phenomenon simultaneously, past, present, and future. Never mind the reality of perceiving all phenomenon. You can't even get a job. You can't even make $1 million that you want to make. You can't even do that. You know, being a Buddha is much more than that. Much more. So if you cannot be a Buddha, all right, then you can be fatalistic. But why is it that you can't lose weight? Why is it you can't get a better job? Why is it you can't change your old habits? Why is it you can't transform your mind? Why is it you cannot improve yourself? Why is it you can't get along with people? Why is it you cannot get rid of anger? Why is it you cannot become more patient and accepting of people around you? Why is it you can't forgive easier? Why is it you cannot let go of things, but you can still be a Buddha? And yet, after prayers, dedications, we pray, may we become a Buddha. So why is it you dedicated for something so far and high and distant, and yet something within your grasp and reach of changing your habit, lessening one's anger, you can't do, but you can be a Buddha. So people who engage in Buddhistic practices, meditations and teachings, and they engage in pujas and dharma work, and they complain they can't change themselves, or they say they need more time, or they buy more time. It is not they can't, it's that they're not willing to. Because they're comfortable making themselves and people around them suffer. Because why? The selfish mind is very strong. So if you make one offering to the Buddha, if you work for Dharma, what's the purpose? The purpose is to become a Buddha. So if your purpose is to become a Buddha, that is really, really 3 countless aeons of work. How come you can dedicate and motivate and think about becoming a Buddha, but you can't get rid of your anger? You can't stop yourself from controlling yourself when you're annoyed with people. Or when people say something to you, you can't control yourself. And you don't want to control it because it's not you can't, you don't want to. Why? You're happy. You're used to being selfish, and you think you get your way by being selfish, self-centered. Why is it when you have bad habits of laziness, exercise, hygiene, work, consistency, and moods, why is it that you can't control your own moods, yet you want to be a Buddha? So within Buddhists, there's a lot of hypocrisy. Many people are hypocritical. Hypocritical in Mandarin? Many people are hypocritical. Why? They have altars, they make offerings, they recite mantras, they serve their gurus, yet they don't change their own mood and their own pattern and their own laziness. Very hypocritical. So what we need to do is, our group is small, and our group will grow, but the rate of our group growing will be very slow. And I'll tell you why. Because our group does real spiritual practice. Our group doesn't look for superficial, oh, I went to the temple, I prayed, I recited Mikdama, I'm wonderful, and next week we're depressed. No, you see, our group, especially me, attack the real problems that we have. Our group actually faces the problems we have, and we actually go straight on. And a lot of people in spiritual practices don't dare do that, and they run away. They fight with the guru. They fight with me. They fight with the spiritual practices, and they run, they hide, or they can't do it. You know why? Because this is real spiritual practice. Why is it real? Because what do I always talk about every week? Every time we meet? Not prayer and solve your problems by miracle, but to look at yourself and to face yourself. And I give you methods on how to do it. It doesn't come from me because I am not above you either. I also apply the methods to myself because I see a lot of things wrong with me. And because I apply these methods to myself and I have this kind of battle, that's why I'm able to teach all of you. And if I am a good teacher, it is not because I'm enlightened or, many lifetimes of high sitting on thrones. It's because I've been battling with myself. And some of the battles I've won, some of the battles I've lost, and some of the battles I've lost, but I'm not going to lose the war. So if I'm a good teacher and I'm able to elucidate clearly, it's because I've listened to the teachings, I've applied it to myself, and I'm fighting a battle. So as I fight the battle, I can tell you, oh, if you come to this bend, there's that soldier. If you go there, there's that, there's that landmine. If you go there, there's this ambush. So I'm letting you know the battles I'm going through. And therefore, when I go through some of the battles, whether I failed or won, I'm able to explain to you because I've been there. So our group will grow. It will definitely grow. It will attract intellectuals, educated, smart, young, medium, and old people who want more than, thank you, Buddha, amen. Why? It doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. Our group are people who take responsibility for their life. Our group are people who don't mind being pointed that they are wrong. It may be painful, but somebody has to get to the disease and cauterize it and sterilize it and then put the treatment. And that's a very painful process. And that's why our group, you see, if I take on this, like every other priest or temple or monk or whatever, every Sunday just get together and have a Buddhist mass, read a little bit from the Lamrim, pass around the baskets for your donations on Sunday. You put your ang pao in there and then Joe's ang pao and make sure our check is more than $2. If I do that every Sunday, I tell you you're wonderful and, Buddha blesses you and smiles at you, we're going to have a full congregation here. Our temple is going to be bursting. Why? Because you don't challenge anyone. And when you don't challenge anyone, is that spiritual? Is that spiritual? Is that real? That's why our group is a very difficult group to gel, difficult to attract, but it will attract, it will grow. And a lot of people run, a lot of people fight, a lot of people are scared of me. A lot of people resist me. I resist myself. You know why? It's not because our group is bad or disorganized or evil or stupid or not moving or not working, because we deal with the real issue. You think about what I say. You see, I'm not here to have millions of people and I'm the golden Buddha on the lotus and you have beautiful photography of me floating across the water. And then guess what? Look, that's the living Buddha from Tibet. He's a high incarnation, his 18th incarnation, blah, 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 whatever. And if we do that, if you actually market me that way, we'll get a lot of people. If you market me the way I am marketed in Tibet and the way my lineage stands, we'll make a lot of money. We'll have a lot of people. We'll get a lot of donations. A lot. We'll get a lot of people send in things and they want blessings and all that stuff, because I have what it takes to market it, the name, the background, the support. The whole Tibetan Buddhist pantheon and the hierarchy of support is behind me. I'm the real McCoy. I know it's sad, but yes, I'm the real McCoy, meaning the background and the lineage, the recognition from the lamas and the abbots in the monastery and His Holiness. I have the whole thing. But you see, if we market it that way, I sit in my pristine robes and I'm infallible. And, my hair, it's not even there, it's shaved, and even you see the Dhamma chakra appearing on my forehead, on my head. And I'm always perpetually in samadhi meditation. I'm teaching Dharma with my mala, have compassion for everyone. And then, of course, some of you don't have the karma to see it, so you computer enhance me floating over the KL. because you don't have karma to see me, but you know I can do that. I mean, if Maitreya can float, why can't you living Buddha float? So since we can't see it, let's just make that on computer. And we advertise because we're not lying because he can do that. It's just we don't have the karma to see it, so we make everybody have the karma to see it. What's wrong with that? So if you do that, I have the name. If you go to Ganden, you say Temrimchi, they're not going to say, hey, we never heard of that. You can market all that. And I'll be big. I'll be famous. I'll be pristine. But I'm not. I'm not pristine. Yes, I've had many lifetimes. You know, maybe I had 15, 16, 17, 18 lifetimes of practice. But you know, you have to understand, I've had another 200,000-300,000 lifetimes of no practice. So I may be a little better than you, that I can absorb Dharma better, but it doesn't mean I'm perfect. And I don't want to be marketed as perfect. I want to be one of the boys. I fall and make mistakes too. And so when I teach, I don't want to teach out of this experience from previous lives that, wow, you know, like, oh, you know, Rinpoche is looking in the air. He must be looking at life number 3. It may be that. It may be that. But you know what? It doesn't apply to any of you. If the Dalai Lama says, hey, in my 5th incarnation, I did that, and you know, I'm going to do this in this life, I'm saying, great, Dalai Lama, I don't have a 5th incarnation. I can't remember it. So if His Holiness does that, it doesn't help. So what we need to do is we need to be on a basic level. What's that basic level? We are the same. You know, so if I can teach clearly and it inspires and moves, it's not because I'm an enlightened being. Even if I am, it doesn't really matter. But it's because I have my inner battles also. So in our group, you will have people from different aspects of life who's attracted and who will stay. And it's difficult for people to stay. Do you know why? Not many people want to hear that they have to take responsibility to grow. Not many people. When I tell people off, many of them disappear, they leave. When I tell them the truth, they say, they like me. They say, oh, nice meeting you. Sign the book. See you later. Why? They don't want to hear the truth. They don't want to take responsibility. It's just another aspect of their life. School, family, people, society, encouraging you to blame the outside, to have more material things, and you'll be happy and not take responsibility and don't look at your problems. So our group will grow. And our group will attract people who wish to take responsibility for their lives, who wish to take responsibility for their spiritual practice, who wishes to take responsibility for them. And that's why in our group we'll have all types of people who are successful in their own mode, in their own thought, in their own fields. They can be the most successful housewife, perfectly running the house. Their kids grow up fabulously in their wonderful ornaments for their husbands. They can be wonderful secretaries. They can be wonderful writers, or whatever they are. They don't have to be Madonnas and superstars, but whatever they do, they're wonderful because they have taken responsibility for their life and what they want to do. So even we can have wonderful drivers, people who work as drivers and policemen in our group, immigration officers, ministers, housewives, whatever you want to call writers, you know. But these people will be good in their field because they have taken responsibility for what they want to do. So when they have taken responsibility for what they want to do, they have a track record of taking responsibility. So when they have a track record of taking responsibility, they will seek a religious practice that also follows their mind set of taking responsibility. So therefore, our little order here will not attract people who have not had the mindset of taking responsibility. In fact, those people who come and stay, they will be depressed. Their mood will go up and down. They'll feel unhappy. They'll feel people are looking at them. They'll run. They'll hide. They'll come. They'll go. Some will stay and grow. Why? Because the atmosphere here is for people who take responsibility. The atmosphere here is for people who want to push. The atmosphere here is for people who want to do things and for people who say, I am in control. Think about that. Because people have questioned. I have the answer. It's not always time to tell the answer. So the people in our group who don't make it, who are constantly depressed, unhappy, constantly not moving up, constantly lazy, constantly not transforming, constantly trying to run away. Some people don't even come for the talks. They actually run away. They hide somewhere in a distant part of KL and make excuses that they can't make it. Or when they see the guru, they just, oh, I want to kill him. Or when you go visit them, they talk about the guru. Yeah, I think Tenrinchi is fabulous if I can kill him. Because he's tortured me, he's beaten me, he's slapped me, he's told me off, he's tortured me, he's kicked me out, he's beaten me, he's SMM'd me. Yeah, they'll say that. They'll say that. Do you know why? You look at the other aspects of their life, their job, their house, their car, their family, their attitude, their dress, their body. You just look at them. Everything else is a failure. So of course their spiritual practice will be a failure. Not because they're a failure, because they are looking for not taking responsibility. Not taking responsibility. So our religious group is a true Buddhist school. Oh God, I hate that. I really hate that. True blue Buddhist school. Sounds almost pornographic. Blue Buddhists. Isn't that fabulous? I love it. I love all this controversy. But you see, the thing is, why am I saying that? Because I'm like that. I challenge myself. And I dare to ask myself questions that are very painful. Sometimes I share it with people, sometimes I don't. I dare to say these things out to myself first before I say it to other people. A lot of things that I joke with people, a lot of things that I make people pick this and this and this or do this or torture them, I've done it to myself. I've done it to myself. I know how I reacted, and I know how I reacted in the beginning and how I reacted later, or it was done to me by my gurus. So I do that to my students and friends and victims. Why? I know how they will react. I know their mind. So I challenge them. If people are angry, I send them nasty SMSs more and more to see how far I can push them. Why? Then they will see how far they can go. And if they thank me, they're intelligent. If they're quiet, they go down. Why? These are questions we have to ask ourselves. So in my form of interpretation of Buddhism, there is miracles, there are signs, there are Buddhas, there are black tea, there are deities, there's the mysticism, there's exotic. But then we go down to the everyday, the real mystical part, when we see ourselves improving and something is moving inside. That is the real mystical part. And that's the reason our group will be filled with intellectuals. Intellectuals doesn't mean you're scholarly because you have a degree from Cambridge. Who cares? When you meet the Lord of Death, you can show him your degrees. Yeah, I got a BA, I got an MA, I got a PhD. He'll say BF for you, big deal. So when you meet the Lord of Death, you show him your degrees. You go back to school and get another degree, and trust me, that will ensure your future life, and the Lord of Death, Yama, will be very happy with you. So people who try to flash me with degrees, I just go, wonderful. Because for the next 20, 30 years, they can show up, I'm a professor. I'm from Cambridge. And I go, yeah, you're from Cambridge. Wonderful. I'm from Ganden. They say, what's that? Well, it's a teeny little village monastery in Mungot, and we learn debate and meditation. And they go, oh, you won't be invited to all parties. Oh, it's okay, because the party you're going to is pretty hot with no aircon. Doesn't bother me at all. And they had this thought. And I'm like, big deal. And you know what? This is not arrogance, or this is not something that I failed in school, which I did terribly, miserably. I failed in school. I used to get people to do my assignments, by the way. Not my Dharma ones, but my other assignments. Miserably I failed. And they give you these books on psychology. I took that for 1 or 2 seasons. I can't remember what it is. It was that big, and you got to remember. I had people do it for me. Thank you very much. Well, not everything, just 1 or 2 tests that, I was a little too busy for because I was at the gym. Okay, never mind. But my point is this. It's not something that's recent. It's something that was with me when I was very young. When I was very young, my step-parents say, hey, you're going to go to college, and you're going to make a lot of money. And you're going to grow up, and you're going to make us proud. Because everybody does that. And I just thought to myself when I was very young, I said, no, I'm not going to college. There's no way you're going to get me into college, university, no way. You know why? I tell you, very young I thought, it's not going to help me at death. I had that thought even when I was a kid. So I used to tell my parents that. Of course, I get a slap and they tell me I was insane. They wouldn't send me for counseling because they thought it would be a smear on their name and reputation that the kid need counseling. Lose face, they're Asians, what? So in any case, this thought came to me when I was very young. So what's my point? Our little interpretation, our little group of Dharma will be what? It will be people who are Buddhists, non-Buddhists, from all walks of life, from all parts of town and backgrounds and all different types of orientations, if I use that word. All different types. Yes. What are you laughing at, Lou? She's cackling away again. Let me repeat. From all different types of orientations. You know why none of that matter? I'll tell you why it doesn't matter. Because what we want is spiritual people who take responsibility, who set a great example for themselves. And in them setting a great example for themselves, they influence people around them, and they make this place a better place to live. And that's how we bring world peace. How beauty pageants, I know. I always want to be a beauty pageant, runner-up, first runner-up, and before they pick and they say, well, what do you want? Oh, world peace. I always want to say that, but I want to give it my version of world peace, about inner peace and world peace, and go on a shabam, and they're like, can you shut up now, beautiful? Can you imagine me in a bikini going world peace before I shaved? With my body in the bikini, you know what I mean? With the high heels, of course, when I walked out, I tripped and fell because I'm not used to pumps or heels or whatever you call it. I want world peace. That'll be the end of the beauty pageants as you've known it for the last 30 years. So our Dharma will grow. It will take off. Because not everybody out there just wants to go to a Buddhist temple and say, oh, mani padme hum, I want my wish fulfilled, thank you very much, I got my 4D lottery. Not everybody wants that. People will look beyond that. So our group will grow. It will take time. It will take more time than other groups. It'll be more severe than other groups. It's severe because we're honest. It is more harsh because we actually put the glare on ourselves. And it will take more time because we take responsibility. It will be more difficult because the gain will be stable. And it will not be plastic because at the end of our lives, we will go to a better place. Not because Rinpoche promised some paradisical place, not because he gave you Vajrayogini and you've been promised a heaven, a garden of Eden in Vajrayogini's red ruby land of perfection. Not because Rinpoche is enlightened, because you took responsibility to transform yourself so you don't collect more negative karma to go to an ugly place. That's why you're going to go to a wonderful place when you're dead. Not because Rinpoche promised, not because of Vajrayogini, not because of the scriptures, not because of Amitabha and going to the Western paradise. What happens if you're bad in direction like me? After you drop dead, where's West? Hello, where's West? I'm very bad in direction. I still can't find the freaking Renaissance Hotel in downtown KL where I used to go and work out. Can you imagine? It takes me 2 hours to find Renaissance. And that's because I've been to every part of KL until I hit that place. Don't you love those one-way things? I go down here, I went the wrong way on one way many times. They're all going this way. I'm going, oh, wrong way. Many times in downtown. And it's fabulous. Every time I go there, it rains. Every time I go downtown, it rains. I don't know. Some gods down there hate me. Either that they're happy or they're crying. I don't know. But I somehow started to think that all of KL's weather gods cannot be affected by one person, me. Who the heck am I? So I got off that ego trip. When I go, it rains because of me. It was an ego trip for a while. But my point is this, is that, if I can't find Renaissance, how am I going to find Amitabha Sukhavati heaven? Think about that. So we're not going to go to a better place because Rinpoche is going to take you there with his magical Poa. Poa is the mind-conscious transference at the time of death. We're not going to go there because Rinpoche, at the end of 10 years of good service toward him, good massage, give him money, take care of him, put up with his screaming and scolding and his slaps, that then he'll give you the Vajrayogini initiation. No, that ain't going to happen. And you're not going to go to this wonderful place because you've been chanting your whole life, and you've been a good little Dharma student, and you controlled your anger, and when you were in the mood, of course. And you worked hard, and you donated everything to Rinpoche, because you donate everything, even your dog. Here, take it. I want it, liberation. Millie, keep your dog. Anyways, you donated everything. And therefore, all your money you gave to Rinpoche, he opens his mouth. The minute he opens, you give him gold-plated tissues to wipe his nose. You're so devoted. I'm such a good devotee. All his tissues are even gold-plated. That's how wonderful I am for Rinpoche. You're not going to go there because of that. You're going to go there because this stupid idiot sitting on the throne learned some wonderful Dharma for people who are not idiots in Tibet. Song Rinpoches, Trijang Rinpoches, the Dalai Lamas. And he took examples like from Mother Teresa, Mahatma Gandhi, and Nelson Mandela, and even His Excellency Mahathir, who gave up his life for this country. He took example from these great people who are self-sacrificing. And he gave you the real gist of spiritualism. And you applied it to your lives. And you got the results. That's how you're going to go to a better place. You see, I can't do it for you. No one can do it for you. None of these guys in this painting here can do it for you. They can't even talk. Nobody, none of these fellas here, hello, can you take us to liberation? They all like, no, I can't. See? Why can this guy on an elephant with a yellow hat take you to liberation? Why do you think he can? Look at him. Look at this guy with a yellow hat. He looks pissed off. He's like, he's probably pissed off because he's dead. I don't know. Why do you think these people can take you to liberation? They can't. So if these people can't, none of the other people or sticks or images or statues in every other temple, whatever, can take you to liberation. Because if they can, that temple will be really popular. Because the minute you walk in, you're liberated, you walk out, that's it. You go to heaven, what? Who can promise that? So our group is going to grow. And our group is radical. You know why it's radical? It's radical because we speak the truth. What kind of truth? Kind, straightforward truth about taking responsibility. You see, that's a very dirty word for a lot of people. Take responsibility. They're like, ooh, I don't like you anymore. You know, a lot of people hate me because I say that. For years, they hate me when I say you have to take responsibility. That's the bottom line, isn't it? Take responsibility. So then you say, well, if it's so simple, why do we need to listen to your stupid Dharma talks that we're bored silly and, why? And the parking sucks too. Why? Why do we have to listen to these ridiculous? Because I give you the methods on how to change your mind. Step by step by step, different facets, so that you can apply these to change your mind to become responsible. And that takes time. So our group is going to be very popular. It's going to grow. It's going to attract people who are just like you, just like this guy who questioned me to death. And that's why we're here, because he asked me all these stupid questions about learn his lesson. Oh my God, I wish he'd learn his lesson for God's sake. And I can't finish my list. We're going to be smart. It's going to be raining questionnaires like him. People are going to be, excuse me, can I ask a question? And I'm outside, of course, I've got to be a Dharma teacher. Yes, you can. Inside, I'm thinking, oh God, if we were in an alley, I tell you, ooh, interrupt me one more time. People like that. Who says, look, explain to me. People like that over there. Who wears 1/4 meter of clothing on weekends and jumps up and down drunk in clubs on platforms telling everybody that she's pink. They'll come to the Dharma, and who come to the Dharma not to liberation, to supplement their income. And that's fabulous, because I'd rather her supplement her income from here and spread the Dharma than supplement income jumping over there or somewhere else, spreading some kind of crap materialism. That's my point. So, and we're going to have people like Madame Lowe, who lives in the palace somewhere in Egypt, I don't know where. Her house is the size of a pyramid, She gets lost in her own house. I went there once, I said, that's it. Bury me when I'm dead here, in the sarcophagus. Who will drag herself around across town and sit here and park her huge car outside, get it out of my face, thank you, and sit here and torture herself and listen. Why? These people have one thing in common. I want to take responsibility. Then you have people like Henry, who does divinations too, but his dice is for something else. Yeah, that's right. When you do divinations, it's with a dice. In Genting, they use dices too. So we're kind of like similar. We both use dice. So you have Henry, who maybe 150 years ago he was some kind of good-looking Casanova, and who rolled a lot of dice. And I'm rolling dice in India for people. He's rolling dice in Genting for people too. And he's here because he said, look, I want to take responsibility for my life. And don't forget Mr. Accountant here, who's writing all kinds of scribbly little notes here with his little pen. Rinpoche says, take responsibility. What do you have to write that down for? What are you, an idiot? I mean, that's why he's spending his evenings here. He can be at home, getting a massage, whatever his friend, or having a pizza, watching TV, watching a sex show. I don't know, whatever he does. Who cares? Or maybe, taking freelance job and making more money. What's the big deal? He's here. And look at Paris. She's attended every single talk without being busy. You don't hear about her parents calling her home. You don't hear about her boyfriend. You don't hear about anything party. She's here every teaching. Hello. That is a miracle. Buddhas do exist because Paris is here. And I'm not joking. Why should she be here? She's a young, fabulous girl who can do anything she wants in KL. She's got plenty of money. She's educated. She's smart. She's got great friends. She can do what she wants. Why should she hang out in this little 4-room place having some weird religious scream at her every weekend about taking responsibility? Because she does want to take responsibility. Because she is intelligent. I'm not putting anyone down. I'm not complimenting. Then, of course, don't forget our very own citrus fruit here from Switzerland, lemons. Look at this white guy. Why is he hanging out here? He thinks he's Bruce Willis. He's not. He's cut his hair off trying to tell us, hi, I'm Andy Willis. I'm like, save it. Why is he here? Why is he here with his weird half-breed Tibetan girlfriend there? You know, half Tibetan, half whatever. Hanging out in Malaysia. Why? There's someone that want to take responsibility. And then the king of them all, Pat, Lou. Look at Pat. What's Pat doing here? What is this, an after-hours happy hour club here or something to pick up on beautiful women? Look at Pat. What is Pat doing here? Is this happy hour at Be Yourself Club? Why is Pat here? And then when you guys are all prostrating to the weirdo over there, she's sitting there like, I wish I could have a ciggy bud. Why? But on an outer level, we look and say, you know, look at us. We come from such weird backgrounds. You see, our church doesn't attract one or this or this. It doesn't attract any certain type of group. It attracts everybody who says, I want to take responsibility. It doesn't care what you do. It doesn't care about your orientation. It doesn't care about your background, your wealth, your genealogy, your race, your country. It doesn't care about anything. Do you know why it doesn't care? Let me tell you. Not because I'm great, because that's the way Buddhism was meant to be presented. That's the way Buddha spoke. Because if you look at Lord Buddha's students in his life, it came from all spectrums of life. And therefore, if we have a Buddhist teacher or a religious teacher that says only these people can come and these people cannot, these people can be close, these people cannot. Or if you have this or you give this, then you can be close. If you give this, you're not close or you're not, whatever. That's not Buddhism. That's not the way Buddha meant it to be. Because Buddha's message, I hate that word, but anyways, Buddha's message is taking responsibility. Buddha's message permeates and pervades every single person who wants to do something about their life and have a permanent effect. That is the beauty of Lord Buddha's teachings. And if you're here, you're that type of person. If you're not here and you know about it and you're avoiding it, you're not that type of person and you're trying to be. If you completely run away, then you know that in other parts of your life you run away. And some people say, well, they're successful in their life. Yeah, but you see, success doesn't mean taking responsibility. They might have drowned themselves in that to run away from other things. Running away has many faces. Our form of Buddhism, our form meaning what? Taking responsibility Buddhism, is for today's modern, growing, smart, educated individual. Educated doesn't mean school. It means your mind is open. Type of people. That's why you have all types of people in here. Look at Jivan. What is that? Take a look at him. What is it? He's got this nose like that. He's got one streak of hair going here, and he's sitting there intently listening. Why? Why is this retired, nice Malaysian guy who could be at home with his wife doing who knows what, dancing around a tree, singing Hindi music for 3 hours? I mean, he can be around a tree. It's raining too. They love dancing around trees. It's raining and, all that stuff. Can you imagine his beautiful wife? Have you seen his wife? She's beautiful. Rajaswati. Can you imagine him, with her hand running around our trees around Bandar Utama and near the park? And, Sing Pia out there filming. Just think. And Tashi's half Indian. That's why she's so beautiful. She can sing those Hindi songs. If she can't, we just get a cat. We get a cat and step on its tail. Same thing, what? Sorry, India. I don't mean any offense. You know me. I'm obnoxious. Yeah, so imagine him with his beautiful wife swinging around trees in the rain, Bandar Utama Park right there, and Sing Piao filming it, and Tashi is sitting there hitting the cat. Wouldn't it be a fabulous movie? Think about that. Oh my God, wouldn't that be wonderful? And he's not. This fabulous Malaysian gentleman's here, listening intently. He goes in or not, I don't know, but he's interested in something. He's the only person here that his nose is bigger than his ear. Both ears. Okay, so why? Why? Because we want to take responsibility. And we heard something that touches something deep inside, spiritual practice. So our form of spiritual practice will be, I give you information that's been practiced and that works through the ages, through the sages, through the saints. And you know who are the saints? Saints are ordinary people like us who decided to take responsibility. That's what saints are. They're people who took responsibility. That's why they're saints. They're different than other people. They have a halo around them to distinguish that they've taken responsibility. If you look really close at the fine print, it'll say Halo Incorporated. Yeah, you'll see that. No, I'm sorry, Responsibility Incorporated on their halo. That's how you get a halo, you know? That's how all these fellas get a halo. They take responsibility. They stop blaming God. They stop blaming their friends. They stop blaming their parents. They stop blaming their lovers. They stop blaming their wife, their husbands, their cat, their dogs. They stop blaming the weather, the society, the government. They stop blaming everyone around them and everything, and they took responsibility. That's how they got the halo. I put in my order for one, but it hasn't come in yet. And I told them I want a red one because everybody's green. I want to be different. I like to be different. Mr. Accountant here wants a purple one because, you know, green and red's been taken up. Questions here wants a yellow one to match his yellow shirt, of course, the one that he wore on the first day and drove me nuts with his questions. And need we ask what color Paris's is going to be? Need we ask what color that halo is going to be? No, we don't. If Paris attends a spiritual talk more than once, something is happening. She can be at home with her mother, you know, Datin and Dato, making cookies, eating, getting fat, going to, you know, talk about surgery and, you know, talk about gym and, I don't know, talk about what car to get, you know, and where she should go to help the poor. And, you know, before she gives her $1 to the beggar, she'll debate whether it's really helping them or not for 1 hour while having a mocha. Anyways, think about all that. Why are we, and here, don't forget Miss Hong Kong night girl here. Miss Hong Kong here from, you know, and now she wants to move the next level up to Macau. And we know what a wonderful, friendly, happy family environment Macau is. It's wonderful for nice, decent, young Malaysian girls like her. Of course, she's going to go there to be a nun. We know what Macau is all about. The minute she goes there, she's going to call up Paris, say, can I borrow your outfits? Thank you very much. And Paris would be like, why? One word, Macau. She says, okay, I'll send it to you, DHL. And you know why? She can get 40 outfits in one package because it's only a quarter of a meter. Why is she here, listening to the Dharma? And she even puts on the face of entertained. She looks happy. Why?